I went by here twice. I thought it was real good.
That's okay. You're here, sir.
Well, see, I gave you a try, but
Sorry, no, I saw that, Commissioner. Yeah, but
good to see you all. Again, I'm sorry I pulled up the meeting. Have we started yet?
We haven't started yet. So,
Oh.
would you like the first thing we can do is the pledge of allegiance?
Yes, again, thank you for waiting. We'll start with a pledge allegiance.
Look, there's our flag right there.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
All right, so under public comments, we did not have anyone signed up, but I would, Mayor Renteria, if you would like to make any comments on behalf of Town Horizon.
Mayor, how are you doing?
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Okay, well, we'll put a bigger sign up next time.
Yeah, there's a sign that says, "This is it, Leon."
I just want to say thank y'all for coming out to Horizon. You know, this is part of the work out here. It's great to see you. Any ideas we can offer to help?
Thank you for hosting us.
Thank you all so very much.
Okay, so then that will take us to agenda item 4. This is the consent agenda, which includes approval of the minutes from the meeting on June 18th, as well as the financial report.
A motion on the approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
We have a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. That's
No,
your deal.
you're fine,
Go,
sir.
go ahead.
You do what you think is best. I'm here. So that'll take us to agenda item 5A, and this is to discuss and take appropriate action on the creation of a hiring committee for the transit director. And Mr. Landeros, this is something that you had discussed previously. If there's anything else you'd like to add to that?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, members of the board, members of the public. As we continue to move forward, if you recall, County HR indicated we're looking at about a 16-week. Somebody else's eyes like almost rolled in the back of his head over there. Sorry, 16 weeks, so about a 4-month onboarding process. And so the hiring committee, I think, needs to. I'd like the board to consider appointing members who have an interest to really be involved in making decisions on behalf of the LGC as we move forward. Things like finalizing job descriptions, developing the interview questions, really working with the county's human resource staff to do that. And then ultimately screening the candidates. The final candidates would come back to the full board for an interview. Right? We would do that in executive session, just like we do with any other personnel. But this is really to work closely with human resources over the next several months to get the process and get us the final candidates in place, right? So coming up with interview questions, I mean, all of those things. So that way we don't have to worry about coming back to the board every month. And so today's action ideally would be to establish the hiring committee and then give them the authority to work with county HR for the recruitment process, with the understanding that all the candidates would obviously come back to the full board for final interview once we're at that point.
How many members are you looking for?
We can't exceed quorum, so 3, right?
I open up the floor for any volunteers.
And I have an interest in being on that committee.
We have Jose.
Volunteers.
Anyone more? So we have to Carl. As Carl is not a voting member, can he participate?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And then, so there's still room for a 3rd board member in the event there's
More interest?
More interest, yeah, because Carl wouldn't affect our quorum. Yeah.
Now, on the and this is for the permanent director, is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, this is for the permanent director.
I'll go ahead and volunteer also. We need to, is Mr. Estrada here?
Yes.
Oh, there you are, okay. Jose, do we need a vote on this?
Yes, so I recommend a motion, right? So a motion to appoint the members that were discussed here today, Chair Leon, Board Member Medina, Board Member Remkes, and myself, to the hiring committee and grant them the authority to work with county human resources for the recruitment of the county's, of the LGC's, transit director.
Now, before we take a vote, I just wanted to make sure that, I know that our next point is a vice chair, and it would seem to me that the vice chair would move on to be the chair. And please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm thinking that the vice chair would automatically take over.
No, actually, the bylaws state that the Commissioners Court will always appoint the chair.
Okay.
Yes. So, after your retirement from the county, the court will have to appoint a new chair.
Okay, perfect. Okay, you've got the names of the volunteers for this committee. Do I hear a motion?
I will make a motion.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And Susie was on the call. Here we go. Susie, her motions, if you can make sure you're on the screen and you unmute yourself. So we will move on to the next agenda item. This is agenda item 5G, discussion and take appropriate action to select a vice chair. As you all recall, Michelle Garcia was serving in this capacity, and so she has resigned and moved on to youth. vacancy, so I would like to have you all consider appointing the vice chair for the LGC.
Do we have a volunteer?
I'll go ahead and volunteer, as I'm in a row.
Okay, all right, we have one volunteer. Any other names? No? Okay, since we have just one name, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
I'll second that. We have a motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
So until Susie comes on, I'll just we still have quorum, so we'll count.
Motion carried.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you for volunteering.
Condolences. I'm just gonna move down to the county.
Yeah.
Okay, this will take us to item C. This is to receive an update and discussion on El Paso County's local agreements for rural transit system, cost sharing with the city of Socorro and the town.
Now, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Did you finish?
Yes, sir.
Okay, before we start, I'll let you start then.
Okay.
I've got some concerns.
Yes, sir. So the county's first venture into cost-sharing transit began long before the LGC was in existence, and it was the partnership with the city for Route 84. And so the county contracted that route, but also proposed to cost-share that with the city of Socorro and the town of Clint. The city of San Elizario was not formally incorporated at the time, so those are the only municipalities that received an invoice. And because we are now, there's two things that have been, well, there's a few things that have been happening. Obviously, the LGC's existence and its focus is one. Route 84 will be phased out at the end of the calendar year. We've been planning for this. We've known this, right? And so that route will be replaced by some other modifications that the LGC service will take the place of. And then the other thing that's obviously happening here is the wind down of service within the city of Socorro because they have not funded this. And so we at the county are proposing staff has worked on providing notice to Clint and to Socorro that will be terminating those cost share agreements. With Clint, it makes a lot of sense because they're effectively going to be billed twice, and so they're a member of the LGC. We should only have one cost agreement with them, and so that's what we'll be moving forward. With Socorro, however, there's a little bit more complexity to it, given that they are not an LGC member. And so I know on the next agenda item, we have the removal policy. But Commissioner, from what I understand from your office, we wanted to ensure that we had a chance to discuss this at the LGC board. And then ideally, I think we'd like to give some direction to Barracuda on what some of these items are. And Annette, is this the item?
It would be the next one.
The next one, okay. And so just kind of big picture, think about putting together a plan to let Socorro residents know that their service is going to be eliminated by the end of the calendar year. And also let them know that there is one final chance for them to request that their city council put this into the fiscal year 25 budget, but that window is obviously shrinking. In the event Socorro City Council decides not to change their mind.
If I can interrupt, can we go ahead and read D into the record, because that's what we're getting into right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So 5D will be to receive an updated discussion on the draft service reduction.
I meant C.
No, we were on C.
Yeah, we're on C.
Okay, I thought for some reason.
Oh, okay, no. No,
Okay,
yeah, we're
I
on C.
apologize.
Yeah.
Being late just messed me up all the way around. I apologize. Jose.
So what's pending, or what's kind of coming up in a few weeks, we'll place the letters to terminate the agreements with Clint and Socorro on the Commissioners Court agenda. But as we do that we want that to be one forum for broadcasting this out to residents in Socorro. And so I think we need to let residents know what that's going to look like. And so if that's more on item D, then I think it's good that we've read that in then. Because I think the thought is to publish, have handouts, like, kind of like these, to riders that get on Route 84. So we need to work with the city and on Route 84 to see if that's something that we could share to riders that get on in Socorro. We need to figure that out. We need to let the riders that get on the LGC buses receive that same information. Social media pushes, press releases, but then also a community meeting, I think sometime in mid-August, to let the public know this is the change that's coming. That's in line with the service reduction policy, which states that at a certain point, if you're going to completely eliminate service, especially to continue to meet the federal requirements for reduction in service, we need to make sure that we let the public know very deliberately that service is going away. But the message, I think, right now that we'd like Barracuda to kind of get started on is a push for handouts, letting folks know service is proposed. The LGC will reduce service because, and I think this is an important part, the LGC is only proposing to reduce service because the city of Socorro on this date in 2023 voted unanimously to not participate in the LGC. I think that's a critical part. This is not the LGC's fault. Their elected leadership in Socorro made a decision to not fund their membership in the LGC, and we need to let the residents know that, and then know that they can appeal that decision to the council if they'd like. And then if Socorro does not agree to join in this fiscal year, then the message needs to continue, but it needs to change that the service is being reduced still as a result of their action, but that the service will terminate on December 31st and will not be available on January 1, right? And so the more that we can let the residents that use the service in the city of Socorro know that, the better. And it's not just them, unfortunately, it's also the riders that are in our communities that go into Socorro. They also need to be made aware that service will be reducing here in the next 6 to 7 months.
Did everyone get a copy of the letter that was prepared by Reina?
I believe Reina put that together, and she's online.
Yeah. Did everybody get a copy of it?
I did not disseminate that, sir, so I don't think we can get a copy.
Okay. Is there any way we can get a copy from? And I think it's exactly what Jose just mentioned. We have to be very, in my opinion, very strong in that we made several attempts in trying to get them to join. And the way the letter reads is, I think we need to get that into the first paragraph, letting them know that we really wanted them in the LGC. We made several attempts, and they still voted against it. And like Jose said, that if the residents there realize that there's one more chance, where there is a possibility of convincing City Hall or their council to change their minds, it can still be done. And so I open it up for discussion.
So is any direction, did you say going to Barracuda at this time, or was that subsequent?
No, I think so. I know we have Gabe and Cole here from Barracuda, and so I think what we need help with, like in the short term, are graphics for social media, pushing that out to like zip codes in the valley, including, I would say 27 and 28, primarily because 28 is residents in Horizon that may find themselves going down into Socorro. But I mean, just generally the valley, because you may have folks from Sanelli coming to Socorro. They all need to be made aware of the decision. But I think the messaging needs to include that this is a result of the Socorro City Council's, and it wasn't like it was a split vote, right? And so that's important. There was a unanimous decision by that council to not fund this. And I think I think we need to be very clear on that. And then that they can still reach out to the city council to urge them to reconsider. So it's kind of like if you have satellite dish and your channel is not in agreement with the dish provider, and then they tell you this channel is not available, but contact them, and it's the same idea. If that design and that infographic can be repurposed into something that we can hand out on our routes, that's also, I think, helpful. And I think that needs to happen quickly. And then the bigger part would be like a public meeting. I think probably once we know whether whether Socorro is going to, if Socorro changes their mind, or let's say they don't change their mind and we're going to continue as is, then I think in October, at the beginning of our fiscal year, is when we have a public meeting somewhere in Socorro, or a series of meetings to let them know, to let the public know and come ask questions and tell them that it's happening, so that we can say that we made our good faith effort to let the public know about the reduction in service.
And can we have those meetings, even though it's not on, during one of their council meetings, that we have it there at City Hall? I mean, why couldn't we have it there, or should it be another location?
I think they would probably not be open to us having a meeting. I think it might be challenging for them to let us use their space and then let them know, hey, like, I think we'd go into their location and then tell them we're only here because your council didn't fund us.
And that's exactly my message.
Yeah.
Right, so I think if I may, is that I agree with this, is that I think we have to communicate to that affected population. Along with that is that if the city, for whatever reason, isn't willing to host the LGC, then I think we could probably look for a location. The other thing that I would also advocate is for us to just let the MPO board know, right? Because from the city of Socorro, but along with that, we have overlapping jurisdictions as well. So I think that potentially talk to the MPO just to inform them this is what's going on, the analysis that we've done, and this is the potential actions. That way we raise the alarm even further now with the bigger group, such as the MPO or the transportation policy.
And I think the messaging is very important. I wouldn't want, and I'm not saying they're going to do this, but that Socorro gets a hold of it, somehow distorts our ultimate goal. Have them join the fold, not anything else. So I think there's an urgency about us getting the message out to the public.
Well, again, I guess just to add that in, I don't think there's anything wrong with us trying to advocate for them to still participate in some form, however. Even maybe communicating that letter, Commissioner, maybe, not only to their elected officials, but also, I think for me, it's just to have that abundance, the outreach. We've done all this and nobody calls us to say, hey, we didn't know about this.
Any further discussion?
I see a potential challenge in that if you hand out a flyer that's, let's say, contact your elected official to resolve this. Separate meeting where, like you said, we're advocating for this. How that cross-pollination, whether people from Socorro attend that meeting, you kind of have a conflict. Is this a governmental authority where we're going to allow this, or is this a public hearing? So I think give some care towards the timing. If you're going to have the meeting first and then pass out the flyer to contact your officials, or the other, because the way this is released is going to have a big impact on how it goes over. Because one meeting is for outreach and information, and the other is for what's the council going to do. And there's nothing to stop council members from attending the outreach, which can really quickly. So I bring that up. The other thing I would like to say is, for whatever direction you give Barracuda, please make sure you program in there permission and time for working with some Metro, because all that, if you're requesting anything, you pass that on the buses themselves. Our PIO and our department's going to need to review what's passed out. So please do that.
Yeah, so let's, so I think it's a good point, but I think the logistics of trying to coordinate a meeting right now is going to be challenging. So I think that the first kind of push to let them know to reach out to their elected officials, to the Socorro City Council, that's probably all just done by virtue of earned media, social media ad buys, and and then some flyers, some informational flyer that we can hand out, and then coordinate with, because the big route that's there is Route 84, and so we would need to coordinate with you all. So I think we can do that, and I feel like that's pretty quick, right? It's the meeting that's going to have it's not quick, so I don't want to be so cavalier, right? Yeah, I can do that by tomorrow, right?
Or yesterday.
Right. But the coordination of the meeting and all of that will take more time.
It's gonna take more time, and in addition to that, I was told today by that currently with the budget that we have for the contract with Gems at the end of September, we're gonna get very close to that. I don't think we would have peaking budget for the decision. So it might require a scope of work.
Okay.
We may need you to come up to the mic.
He's kind of right there.
Cross your hands right now.
I didn't know I needed to be like. So what I was saying is I was told today by our CEO that under the current contract, which ends at the end of September, we probably don't have the budget to conduct a public meeting. We would need a new scope of work for that.
So then,
For the PR outreach and the social media stuff, yes, we still have enough left for that. But if there was a meeting that needed to take place, then we probably would need to do some kind of amendment. Also, for me, in reading the recommendations from TTI, and they can correct me on this if I'm wrong, those recommendations to me refer to the LGC deciding to reduce service, which in this case, you're not deciding to reduce, you're reducing service, but you didn't make the decision. That decision was taken out of your hands by the city of Socorro. A public meeting, in terms of PR, a public meeting is meant to be a two-way discussion between the community and leaders. There's no discussion about this from our side from the LGC side, because there's really nothing the LGC can do unless the city of Socorro changes their mind. So really think about what a public meeting would look like. There's nothing to present really other than, hi, we're here, we're no longer giving you service. And then what happens? So in which case it just doesn't seem logical to me to even have a public meeting. I think that letting the community know via these methods, and also I'm assuming that as far as the paratransit side, that the county might have a list of phone numbers or emails of people who regularly use the paratransit service that we could contact directly. And again, just like you said, using physical handouts on the routes and at certain key locations in Socorro maybe, and then possibly like a 6-week social media paid campaign via the county's channels, because they have more. We were using the RealCog before when we did the public meetings for paratransit for the ADA plan. And what I was told from our social media manager is the county has more reach because of the size of the audience. So we would be more likely to get people's eyes on that campaign. And then of course, like you said, the earned media to the traditional methods, TV, news.
Okay.
So again, that's how I understood the recommendations from TTI as far as reduction of service. And if that's incorrect, then I mean we're gonna have to have a public meeting. We're gonna have to have a public meeting. So that's our recommendation at this time, is to use those methods to inform the public and try to get them to go to City Council of Socorro and have another vote basically, and hopefully change their minds. And I mean, it would really be the onus of being publicly accountable would really be on the city of Socorro, to my imagination, because they're the ones that are making this decision.
Board President, I suggest that we move on to item 6 on the agenda, just because the presentation is too much into an area that's not on the posted agenda, but can be more related to item 6, but only after you hear from the consultant on the service reduction policy that they've. Okay, but Carl, you brought up a good point as far as contacting your city leaders. If they were to contact us directly, then we tell them, hey, you got to contact them. And as far as having a public meeting, well, I guess we can talk about this in executive. So, okay.
Yes, so let's move on to 5D, and that's to receive an update and discussion on the draft service reduction removal policy from TTI. Kelly Bloom with TTI is going to be making the presentation. And if you would like to take over the, share your screen, Kelly, that's fine. And then just as a reminder to everyone as well, members of the executive committee did hear a presentation from TTI specifically with regard to the reduction plan. So it was provided at a greater depth than what will be provided right now, but they did have that meeting last week.
Okay, you can see my presentation and my audio is good?
Yes.
All right, well, good afternoon. I am going to give you an overview of the draft policy, which again, it's been transmitted to you and we're definitely interested in hearing your feedback on it. Let's see, screen. There we go. So the goal of the policy is to identify, evaluate, and implement reductions in transit service in non-member jurisdictions. So the idea is that this version of the policy applies to fixed route service and it will apply to ADA paratransit services. And then we would have to amend the policy if, something like general public demand response is implemented in the future. It's just something that we're going to pilot test in the case of Socorro, and I'll talk about that later in the presentation. So just hitting some of the highlights of the policy. First of all, it's built around a set of guiding principles. The idea being that these are principles that we will refer back to whenever we're identifying potential service reductions and analyzing their impacts. So, what are the things that we most want to achieve? We want to, prioritize maintaining service in our service standards in the member jurisdictions, for example. We want to make sure that we're using our funding responsibly. We want to minimize the adverse impacts of the service reductions on the member jurisdictions. We want to make sure that services are sustainable over the long term. We want to comply with federal and state regulations. So, among other guiding principles, which you can see listed here. The overall process is that when a member leaves EPATS or a jurisdiction has not joined EPATS, the board will make a decision to direct staff to apply this policy with respect to the services that are operating in or possibly adjacent to the non-member jurisdiction. And they may direct staff to conduct a service review, or we're building in the flexibility that the board may decide to take no action or to come up with other actions that aren't explicitly called out in the policy. What we found in the course of developing this policy is there's a lot of really case-specific, site-specific kind of considerations that can come up whenever the service reduction decision is on the table. And we wanted to make sure we acknowledge that flexibility is important. So if the board decides to move forward with what we're calling a service review, which is basically an analysis, it's a development of service reduction options and analyzing their impacts. That may involve data collection, analysis, outreach to member and non-member stakeholders consistent with the Title VI plan, then development of the service reduction options, and then a recommendation of one or more options to the board. The idea with the outreach here is it's more exploratory. That's how to get input, to get feedback, to kind of, it's part of the data collection process essentially at this stage. Next step in the process is the board will select a service reduction option or determine that no actions are needed. The idea being that the option may include several different actions that the board may take, which I'll talk about in more detail. Then staff will conduct additional public outreach. This is more about, hey, we're planning to do this. Let's have a discussion. We're going to be, doing this service reduction. What does the community have to say about it, or what are their concerns? Then staff will account for that, make revisions to the options, present them to the board, and then at the end of the day, the board can approve the service reduction actions, and then they can move on to implementation. So overall in this process, it's the prerogative of the board to determine if and when a service review is to be conducted, and the board may choose to take other measures. So, for example, if there is a member jurisdiction that leaves the LGC temporarily, the board would have the option to come to an agreement with that member jurisdiction to possibly receive funding contributions retroactively rather than go through the process of reducing service for, say, just a year, because that reduction can create a lot of instability for the riders, a lot of confusion about what's available when, and there's also an expense associated with even doing that in the first place. So overall, when the board is making these decisions, there are some considerations that we've spelled out here that they can look at. And these are also things that staff would all evaluate and consider as up to the service review analysis. They look at factors like resource allocation, how are we doing this in a sustainable way? Are there operational inefficiencies that we have the chance to correct, or would our analyses result in inefficiencies that we want to avoid? Is the service cost effective? Will the services that result from service reduction be overly complex, or will there be instability in the system? The idea here being that if, for example, you cut, say, weekend service in the non-member jurisdiction, but you continue to operate it in the member jurisdictions, then you're going to have to think about how you're going to account for that with the service design. So you'll have to come up with a different schedule and different routings and publicize all of that just because you don't have that weekend service now. So the steps like that can introduce complexity in the system. Impact on access, the idea being that individuals need to access jobs, services, medical facilities, things like that. And some of these facilities and destinations might be located in the non-member jurisdiction or the reverse, which is actually the local economic impact consideration here too, is businesses within member jurisdictions might be drawing employees or customers from non-member jurisdictions who are accessing those businesses via transit. Equitable distribution of service amongst all the EPATS members and amongst different demographic groups. Consideration of alternatives that might be available, and the feasibility of substitute services that might be available as well. Like if a service can be removed, but you can realign another route to kind of cover that, then maybe that's a consideration as well. So data collection, just quickly, we would likely in many cases have to collect ridership data, origin destination pattern data, costs, travel times. There's a lot of different data that we might collect to inform the service review. And then we can conduct several different types of analyses that, at the discretion of board and staff. They may be conducted with respect to the member jurisdictions or the non-member jurisdictions, or more of a system-wide look, looking at impacts on ridership, efficiency, effectiveness, origin destination patterns, specific demographics, recalculating members' financial contributions, equity. There's a lot of other things that we can look at as our best deemed necessary for a particular case. And the different service reduction actions, this is not all the options that are available, but these are the most typical options. And these are not necessarily actions that you would just pick one and that would be it. Sometimes you might do a package of them, which we're calling an option. The option being a collaboration, a compilation of different actions. So, kind of on the low impact to current riders side, we have just not prioritizing the development of future services or infrastructure investments in the non-member jurisdiction. So if we're going to introduce new services in the future, they will not be in the non-member jurisdiction. Removing or relocating transit stop infrastructure, meaning bus shelters, things like that. Consolidating stops in the non-member jurisdiction, so removing some of the stops, but not necessarily all. Increasing the headways in the non-member jurisdiction. The idea being that you're providing less service, fewer buses, that maybe that's an opportunity to take some of that service and reallocate it to member jurisdictions. Reducing the service span, reducing the service days, like the example of not providing weekend service. Realigning a route, or completely eliminating a route or service. And then the last one is using operating policies to try to achieve a particular outcome. So service would continue to operate in the non-member jurisdiction, but the fare would be higher to offset the loss of the funded contribution. So the next set of slides just kind of talks about those actions in more detail. The key member benefits here, we put these in here because we wanted to acknowledge that some of these actions are not necessarily things that, there's a benefit to these actions in many cases to the non-member jurisdictions. Like in the case of action number 2, removing bus shelters, that there's actually a benefit to the members of taking the, say, bus shelters out of non-member jurisdictions and installing them in member jurisdictions. Rider comfort, possibly increases in ridership, things like that. So it's not just the fact that we're It's like, oh, well, you're not a member, so we're just going to take these things away and not do anything with them, which we wanted to, recognize that we think that that's an important thing to convey to the public. It's like, yeah, there's a reason why we are doing this overall, that it is because we have an obligation to our members to prioritize their needs and maintain service standards in our member jurisdictions. So it's not like a punitive thing to do service reduction. It's something that's actually, better for the members. And so that's kind of the case with all of the different service reduction options. So anyway, at the end of that, the idea is that staff will recommend one or more of these options, which again, the options being compilations of different actions that can be taken, and take that to the board, and they would present the advantages and disadvantages of the option. They would tabulate the impacts on ridership and other metrics. They would talk about ADA obligations and how that might change. Like if you eliminate a route, that would eliminate your ADA obligation in many cases. And then they would provide an input of a summary of the input that they've received from stakeholders to date. And then the board could select an option or take other actions. And then ultimately the final service reduction actions would be approved after you conduct that second round of public engagement. Then implementation, the idea is once something's approved, staff would develop an implementation plan with timelines, talking about communication strategies, ways that we could minimize adverse impacts, and then committing to continued dialogue during implementation, which kind of leads into monitoring as well. So the idea is the policy also talks about, over time, make sure that the service reductions are, that are implemented continue to do what we expect them to do, that there aren't unintended consequences, to be available for comment from the public and other stakeholders. And finally, that we acknowledge in the draft policy that the policy may have to be amended at times. So, like, again, if we introduce a general public demand response, there might be revisions to the policy that are needed. Or if EPATS adopts a service standards document, then that's something that we would want to reflect in the policy as well. So our current schedule is presenting the draft policy to you today, revising it based on your comments. Then we will conduct a pilot test of the policy in the case of Socorro and Route 84. It's a bit of a simpler pilot test just because of the time that's available to do it. Like, it doesn't assume that we're going to conduct the public and stakeholder engagement activities. But then we'll use that to come up with revisions to the policy based on what works, what doesn't work, and bring that back to you guys. And then the idea, finalizing everything in August. So are there questions, comments? I don't know how you prefer to provide comments on this policy, because there's a lot in it. I realize that.
Yeah, I've got a question, and you touched on it briefly. The ADA portion of it is what's been on my mind for a while. Do we have any additional obstacles in that one area?
In some cases, it kind of depends on what the board prefers to do. I'm just kind of thinking ahead to the case of, say, let's say there's a member jurisdiction that, has service that runs through it, and we want to say, well, we're just going to take out all of the stops in there. The bus will continue to run through that jurisdiction, but it won't actually stop and pick anybody up. Do we still have an ADA obligation to pick up people who reside in that jurisdiction? And one option is to say, yes, we do, because we're going to do that. Another option could be, well, we're going to look at the nearest stops to that jurisdiction that exist after we remove the stops in the jurisdiction. And if those stops have like a 3/4 mile buffer that extends into the non-member jurisdiction, we will continue to serve those trips as well. Or we'll just cut it off as a hard line and say, like, no ADA service at all. And that all of those options, from what we've been able to tell, do satisfy our ADA obligation for the fixed route. But it's a matter for the board to decide what they think is the most appropriate there, given, the other types of considerations that might apply.
Okay, thank you. I guess we'll go more into depth on it in the next section.
And I think there's correct me if I'm wrong, but TTI is working on the actual recommendation, right? So this is the policy, but they're working separately on data collection recommendations as to what level. So this is just the process, and then we come back. That kind of goes back to messaging too, because we've talked about reduction, but what level? So you
so I have a better understanding now of some of this after hearing her presentation. So basically, in my opinion, just from hearing this, when's the last date that the city of Socorro can make a decision on this to change their decision on this? Does anybody know that?
We would need their commitment. They would need to fund it in their budget. So it's really dependent on their budget year and when it starts.
Right.
That's not to say they couldn't, come in mid-year at some
Right.
point. But I think we are targeting the Route 84 reduction is pivotal to this, and that's December 31st.
Okay.
So beginning in calendar year 25, we will reduce service, and that either is going to come, and so Route 84 is going away, and the LGC routes are going to change to accommodate that same service population if everything stayed the same.
Correct.
Based on this, those routes may be revised further. And the information that TTI is collecting right now will help us know whether we eliminate all the stops in Socorro, or maybe there are 2 stops that are really popular from people that come in from outside Socorro that we're going to keep so that we can still let those residents benefit, like if they're coming from Sanelli or from Bavens or from Horizon City. So those are some of the things that the data collection are going to help us do right now.
Exactly. So that was the piece that I was missing. What data is going to be collected from a public meeting? And also, she mentioned that maybe possibly there could also be a way to, just for those specific stops, to raise the fare to offset the cost. So that data, that's the data that would be collected. But I think that the initial PR push should be the simplest solution for all of us, right, is to get the city of Socorro to come on board.
Right.
So I think that should be the initial push, and we can determine at what date are we going to say, okay, this is not going to happen at all, and now we're going to have to schedule these public meetings before the end of the year and get the data that we need to determine what level in that pyramid she had of service reduction is going to be necessary.
Do we have a deliverable date from TCI's recommendations in September?
August, this policy is adopted next month.
Not the policy, but the feedback and recommendations.
No,
Yeah, the analysis is all part of that.
It's all the
yeah,
same.
I think I think we wrap this task order up with TTI.
Oh, okay, so it's a Monday.
Yeah, no, next month. Yeah.
So that's when we'll know what the actual service reduction would be.
Well, we have the pilot data
Yes.
to say like the stop at North Loop and Horizon is popular for both people coming from Horizon City and people coming from Sanelli, and so we're going to leave that stop.
So do you see that like a September action by the board to adopt the specific service reductions?
Yeah, because I think when we head into our new fiscal year, we're going to have to adopt a new service plan, and our new service plan will have an idea of what the routes are going to have to look like.
So in theory, that's when the messaging would really ramp up, once we already know what we're gonna.
Well, I think right now the messaging is we could, based on the actions of the Socorro City Council, the LGC is exploring a reduction of transit service in the Socorro community, including full elimination of the routes. I think we have to be very clear that everything is on the table. Up to, right? Now, once we know what that is, and then we have those informational sessions, that's when we can do that.
I think one of the unique things here is that we have a modeling capacity, right? So policy is one thing, but then once we understand what the effect is, so we have wording and alignment that are very well, we can make a recommendation to maintain that. So the modeling is key in this case, but I think at the end of the messaging is the fact is that the city is unwilling to participate. To not participating, this is a service that's going to be effective ultimately.
But to your point, Socorro's gonna have a couple of months to re-steer the Titanic.
Oh,
We're not.
exactly. So
Yeah.
they could put an item, let's say next week. So if you're watching this meeting, someone can say, hey, we probably need to revisit this. And then program it into our fiscal. So I think there would be some leeway.
Yeah.
But again, until we hear from them or we understand that action is coming forward, then I think we need to proceed in this fashion.
So I think on this item, no action.
Well, I think, speaking with Mr. Estrada right now, Commissioner, I think what we could do is give Barracuda the direction to begin working with this, designate a few members of the board to coordinate with county staff and Barracuda and council, so that everything that's going out is above board and kind of in accordance with the discussion we're having today. And then put together a timeline and share that out with the board. So for example, these letters are scheduled to be on the Commissioners Court agenda on Monday, the 29th, 22nd. So Reina, we need to get with Reina on any revisions that we'd like to see to those, and we can get with her today and tomorrow to see that. So we'll kind of start this process. So even on Monday, you'll see, and they're not necessarily related, right? We're getting rid of those agreements because they're out of date because we have the LGC now. It's not because we're like cutting service, but this is someone outside looking in who doesn't have the familiarity. Like, this is real inside baseball. There's no distinction. They're going to think that we're starting to cut service to Socorro. So that's why we need to be ahead of it. And so, you know, Commissioner, to you and your team's credit, I think pulling this back for consideration before Commissioners Court so that the LGC could have this discussion helps us maintain control of the message so that, like you said, we don't lose that. And it's not that the LGC is this evil agency that's trying to reduce service in Socorro, right? So I think we may need some guidance on that strategic messaging pretty quick here within the next few days so that we can have something ready to go on Monday. Because that's when the Commissioners Court will provide notice to Socorro on terminating the Route 84 agreement.
So, I'll make a motion to that effect. Or do we need to select a couple of people to be on this?
I think it might just be direction.
I think so, we are.
Right. So I don't believe a motion is necessary at this time. We did post the item on the service reduction removal policy as an update and discussion, and so you've engaged in that. A lot of what of Barracuda, you've already authorized at previous meetings. What Barracuda, I think, needs now is direction on how to move forward at this stage. That, you know, we have now received a draft policy of the service reduction and have some idea of what that looks like. It's not being adopted today. It's going to come back later next month for formal approval. You have a time crunch, right? The direction is going to be for staff, and I think it should be county staff, the people with the technical knowledge, and TTI work with Barracuda on getting that plan started. And there's no approval or official action needed from the board today on that matter because you've already authorized some of that in the past. Of course, the messaging will change and will become more targeted when you know exactly what service reduction we're going to implement with regard to the single. And again, like you mentioned, Carl, that's going to be when, you know, TTI provides the information on what exactly the recommendation is with the city of Socorro, and you don't have that yet. The only thing that I would say that I'm going to keep an eye out for as well, in terms of these initial communications or outreach plans, is I want to remind the board that the outreach that we're supposed to be doing and that we're most concerned with is that which is required by the federal regs when you're implementing a service reduction, right? Those minimum requirements are, and we're going to work closely with TTI to identify those. Those are the targets we need to hit in these messages that go out. And then we're going to have to be careful just to make sure that we don't go too far to the other extreme where we're, you know, engaged in a political campaign. City of Socorro has done something wrong, right? Really, that's the sentiment, and we can say that publicly because we've had our own representatives go to their city council meetings and ask them to join. But the main focus of these public outreach, make sure that we comply with those outreach requirements necessary for a service reduction. And keep an eye on that and work with staff and TTI to make sure that that's what we're meeting.
And Barracuda, if you don't mind stepping up one more time, you mentioned there's funding enough for one portion, but not for another. I just want to be clear that the board understands exactly what you meant.
My understanding right now is that there's funding enough to finish what we need to finish from what we've been working on previously, which is finishing up the website, any messaging for any PR that needs to be done between now and September, including this, but not for conducting a public meeting.
And if that's the case, we're just gonna have to do with what we have available right now. And maybe at a future meeting, post another item. There's not much we can do on that issue today. It's not.
No, we're good. No, yes.
So, what is the consensus? Is that what we're looking for?
I think the consensus was that no action is required of the board at this time, but direction has been given to staff in terms of how to proceed.
We'll work on providing updates out to the board. As this goes out, we talked about sharing this through the county's social media account. Might be helpful to coordinate all Facebook pages to go out on that same message, just so it's kind of as many avenues as we can through all the different municipalities here today, just to share that. And then Harrison, when would be the next date that we could potentially present to TPAC and to the board?
16th is our next, we've got a meeting this week, the policy board. So August 16th or September 20th.
Yeah, I think August would be ideal. We'll have already voted on the policy at that point. Can we also present to TPAC?
Yes,
That'd be the first week of August, right?
that meeting.
To say, you know, we're
August
about to.
7th.
Yeah. Okay.
On the 7th.
Yeah. And the LGC will meet on the 21st of August.
Yes.
And so we'll have a chance to present to the MPO before the LGC board takes its final vote. Okay. And then any comments on the policy? I think we can just send directly to Kelly and the TTI team or to county staff. Yeah, because Kelly did mention what the process for collecting those comments are. So if you do have any revisions or comments on the policies, just please send them to Kelly.
Any more discussion?
Let me just ask, would it be necessary to have an EC meeting? Outcome could be?
Yeah, well, no, we will, yeah,
Okay.
before
we do the recommendation to the spot.
yes, yeah. Because we have a standing EC meeting the week before.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
So the executive committee will meet before,
The week before the 21st.
yeah, we'll meet before we even present to the MPO board as well. So count us in, Harrison.
Yeah. Pencil you in.
Thanks. Good stuff.
Okay, then we'll go ahead and move on to 5E. This is where you will receive updates and reports from El Paso Transit staff regarding ongoing transit projects and other transit matters. We do have Reina with county to present.
Good afternoon, board. I just have a handful of updates. As far as the EV pilot program is going, Mr. Sedna is working with the consultant to locate storage in order for us to house the EV chargers, and then we can issue the PO once this is completed. With the passenger shelters project, staff is reviewing final plans after the revisions of the stop locations, and so there's a tentative advertisement of the bid for September. And we've also recently issued a PO for 4 more vans to prepare for operational growth and demand of ADA paratransit services. The ILA with the City of El Paso and Metro for the interim ADA paratransit services is in legal review with the county attorneys. The ADA paratransit plan has been finalized and approved by TxDOT, and the ADA paratransit website, as Dave mentioned, is under development. The last thing I believe would be an update is the ILA with the RMA is also in legal review for the RFP of transit services and the RFP of eligibility assessment. Don't have any additional updates. Any questions?
I wanted to mention one update, and it was the last point that Reina had. We're working with the RMA to procure the all the services that we have, and so by folding in the RMA, every unit of local government. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but every unit of local government in El Paso County, with the exception of the city of Socorro, is working with the LGC on what we're trying to accomplish here. And I think that's a worthy thing to mention, because it kind of shows how broad the support for this initiative is. So I thank the Reina and the staff. We're working on an agreement between the LGC and the county, a master interlocal agreement for the staff, right? So eventually we'll start to refer to Reina not as county staff, but as the LGC staff. And so a lot of the policies and procedures related to employment will be developed in this master agreement between both agencies. And so just wanted to let you all know that, and we moving ahead on that. So that's all.
Thank you, Reina. Thank you.
Thank you.
Reina, is August 1st still the launch date for your paratransit service?
Yes.
Any other discussion?
Okay. Yeah. So we have our next item for executive session.
But no action.
Oh, no action on this one. Yes, sir. No action. So we were looking at going into executive session. However, the facility may not lend itself well for that kind of discussion. And so I did inform Mr. Estrada as well that I think with what we had initially proposed to discuss, we can have that discussion in regular session. So we would not need to we would not need to go into executive session at this time.
So we'll stay in regular session and have those discussions.
That's correct. If we're willing to have a general discussion, we don't have to go into details. I think we can have it here in the regular session. There's no need for executive session 6A. I think it's 6. Yeah, A. So we can just table that, and then for B, if you just want to give them on that.
Yes.
Without a need for any detailed discussions on, particulars of the individuals.
Okay, so then what I can do is I can, should I go ahead and read, and I'm sorry, I missed one number for, should I go into regular session, just go into A, regular session?
Yes, ma'am.
So this is to discuss and take appropriate action on the proposed employment agreement for the interim transit director, and wanted to report to the board that action has been taking place by the county with regard to with human resources, with county transit staff, with budget, and there is sufficient funding that has been identified to pay for the employment and all related costs associated with that employment for the interim transit director up until December 31st, 2024. And we are shooting for July 29th for that one item that needs to be on the agenda for Commissioners Court to be placed, and then we can move fairly quickly thereafter.
So after the 29th, we're looking at how much time, just for the boards?
So essentially August 1st to December 31st.
But I mean, as far as having the interim in place.
We could, what we could do is we can do the required background check prior to that. So that way, once it's approved by county commissioners, there could be a potential start date of August 1st.
August 1st. So target.
I will add to that. I know Annette is using the term we, but really it's the count for correct. It's going to be the county process. It's really being directed and implemented through the county. The interim transit director will be an employee of the county. So these estimates that we're providing to you are those that we've received from the county as of today.
Yes.
And just to repeat, we're hoping to have that person on board very early August. Very good news.
And Commissioner, a big thanks to Annette for working diligently with Human Resources and the County Attorney's Office and the County Budget and Finance Department to move that along. There was a lot of questions. And so effectively that position will transfer over once we have that master agreement in place at the beginning of fiscal year 25 and on October 1.
And I need to echo what you just said. Thank you, Annette, for all the work. I mean, we must have had 6 conversations. It's looking good in this direction. No, it's good. We're back over here. Now we're back to the county, which is all the way around good. And our applicant seems to like this direction. So all looks like we have the green light.
And there would be no action on this item?
No action.
Okay, so with that being said, we do have our last item for adjournment, unless there's anything else that...
Well, one thing I'd like to mention before we adjourn is, again, thank you for Verizon. Mayor, thank you. You put the county of El Paso to shame. We see a lot of goodies that you've given us, so we're going to have to make it a little better for our board next time we meet at the county. So thank you very much. We really do appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's thanks to our Economic Development Corporation.
It's like name brand stuff. Yeti. I have like the Walmart Arctic or whatever. Yeah. Members mark. Yeah.
I need a motion. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I will make that motion.
Did you want to skip that one? From the vice chair?
Oh, the vice chair. No, we already.
Yeah, we did. We
already
did. Mike did. Yes.
We got it. We had a volunteer, and Mike, I
victim.
really appreciate
Yeah, I'm used to that.
Yeah.
So we have a motion to adjourn. Do I hear a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
There's none opposed. We are adjourned. And again, thank you so much for hosting us, Mayor, and great location. I was at the other side of the street, but thank you, and hopefully we'll continue this into the future.
Anytime. When you all are welcome.
Thank you all for driving out,
Thank you.
especially Vincent.
Jessica Lindsay Word. Yeah.
No, but I didn't actually come
Oh,
from
yeah,
there.
you're right. Okay, so then it's Andrea. Andrea
That's
gets
okay.
it.
Okay, thank you.